I give a fuck? Why do I give a fuck? Why do I try so hard? Why do I care so much?
Welcome to Why Do I Give a Fuck? A cross-cultural conversation between myself, Diane Tate,
and Johanna Thompson. In these times of great struggle and possible shift, we ask ourselves,
why do we give a fuck about any of it? How does the lens we see the world through impact what we see?
And what do we do about it? Yeah, on this conversation, dancing with death and what it's like. So I'm going to do a little bit of the storytelling, and this is a reality about being present. Deanne, in our last episode, you spoke into a pamphlet that was like, do something nice for someone for the day, right? And it's also a question, not a question, a thought about being present each day for the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so my stroke came on. I am in Montego Bay and in Jamaica and across the Caribbean. There's Carnival, and so it was the first time that I was able to experience Carnival on the Caribbean. Being a person of Caribbean descent, going to school in New York, everybody knows Eastern Parkway in September. That's what we're doing. We're having U.S. Carnival. Living in Miami, there's, Carnival that happens in October, but, I'm in the land of my ancestors and Carnival is happening, and I'm like, I'm going to Carnival. And so, trip from Montego Bay to town is what we call it, Kingston. Fantastic day. Yard mass is like where everyone gets on the street in costume, the most amazingly wonderful costume. It's mostly the female identified people who are in feathers and small clothing, very small clothing, or no clothing type thing, but feathers and dancing, and there's just lots of joy. And there's, to folks that might not be used to it, it might seem heavily erotic just because there's a lot of beautiful people unclothed, but it really is a family celebration of joy. There's kids that are there in costume and all of that. They call it bands, and like groups of people get together on some big floats with music. There's not floats of like any structures because the art is the people and the dress, the costumes,
Gotcha.
and then the music, which is giving you like the energy and dancing and all of the people. So it was wonderful. So that was how the day started, right? The day started one way, really joyous, really fun. And then as that part of the event went down, I went to an after party, but it's an all day event. So we start early in the morning, sun is out, it's hot, folks are moving around. We get to the nighttime, and I out of nowhere. So I'm healthy. I don't have hypertension or diabetes. I mean, I have a history of that in my family, but I'm really a pretty healthy human. Otherwise, like my lab work and all of that came out in range of all of everything. And so I found myself stumbling and losing my legs. Like I was leaning on a fence at one point and then came off the fence. I didn't lose my breath or anything like that, but I did lose my legs. And my legs just went into complete and total noodles. And so I fell. I fell nicely, so I didn't fell in a way where I would like pass out. I fell and then like went down, did hit my head, and there were a mass of people. That's the other thing about this culture of folks. People are not going to stand around with phones and take pictures. People are definitely hands-on. So I do remember like, don't move me. I think I can get up. But I was at that point in time inaudible because I was having a stroke. So people were seeing me having a stroke, and thank goodness I was at like a major event because I am out of US territory. So healthcare and things like that are different. But because it was a major event, there was an ambulance on site at the space. So apparently massive people carried me over to ambulance. And the people that I was with weren't like in my proximity, so we had to get them. Made a decision to rush me off to the hospital. I'm not conscious during any of those things. Or let me clarify. For people who haven't experienced a stroke or don't know anyone who's experiencing a stroke, I am in a healthy enough position to help people understand what this is like. So I think that I'm communicating. I think that I'm telling people what's going on. I think that I'm trying to make a phone call. I'm not doing those things, but my brain is telling me that I'm doing them. I think that I'm functional, but people are looking at me and trying to communicate with me, and they cannot. they are able to get my companion person to get to the ambulance, who could then make a decision about where to take me for care. And yeah, so during all of this period of time, I'm showing the signs of having a stroke, but I don't know that. When I do come into consciousness, that is what I'm told. You've had a stroke, and I'm like, how's that possible? I'm too young to stroke. Strokes are for grown folks that are, you know,
Otherwise
older.
infirmed and
So I'm like,
yeah.
yeah, you must be mistaken.
Who are
There's,
you talking
I don't
to?
have
It's not
hypertension,
me.
right?
Yeah.
You missed it. But no, okay. So apparently a blood clot had formed in my right parietal lobe,
Okay.
and there is this magnificent, I'm going to call it magnificent medication. I don't know who made it. I haven't looked that up yet, but whatever pharmaceutical company and whatever brilliant doctors have figured this one out. It's called Metalase. And if you are administered Metalase within the first 4 hours from having the event, it really does start to work on the clot and breaking it apart to help a person regain blood flow and all of the things that need to be regained. So I was blessed with being able to have that administered at the University of the West Indies, where all the doctors are trained, and a great, entirely magnificent staff. Um, so I will say I'll be very thankful for that. And then I also, you
All
know, yeah, all of y'all, love y'all lots. Thank you for getting me stable,
yeah.
and providing that kind of care. So I really do appreciate that. And then I worked in a hospital also. I was a hospital administrator in another part of my lifetime, in New York City with the Health and Hospitals Corporation. So when I did come into my consciousness and then started to move around, and I was in the emergency room, and the the emergency room didn't have the standard of care that would allow me to remain calm. I'm just going to say it.
Okay. That is a brilliant way to put it.
Dur- During that critical moment, it's really important to be calm and at peace, because they're like, calm down, calm down. And I couldn't, so I did need to be transferred from that facility to something that was closer to home. And that, another um, typical, thing of that folks might say about Black women when they're stubborn. They stubborn, and I needed to leave and sign myself out. The doctors did not let me go. They were like, "You are tripping, lady, right now. We don't know what's going on with your brain, and it needs to be monitored." But I was like, "I do know what's going on with my internal body, and I have high blood pressure right now, so I can feel that. So I need to move to another place." And I got transferred, and during this period of time, I have two young adult daughters, so having to inform them, that's like a whole nother level of like being outside of the country with your family and having to inform your young people what's going on with like their mother, the person that holds them, mom.
Yeah,
Um,
big deal.
and so they were like, all right, it's trying to get to me as soon as possible. So they arrived the next day as I am getting to the next facility, that felt a lot more comfortable for me, to receive care. And and basically that's when I learned that I did have a blood clot in the right parietal lobe, um, that the metalase had begun to break the blood clot apart, which is yay, great. So now that part of it is gone. But then when it's breaking the blood clot apart, it also is bleeding, right? Because the clot is now it's bleeding. So now there's bleeding on the brain, and now they have to make sure that the bleeding on the brain doesn't spread, and that my I don't form another clot someplace else, because that could have been like super detrimental to my life. So when I say dancing with death, it really was a dance and a negotiation, because I'm out of US territory. I'm in a different country, very unfamiliar with the healthcare system and the level of care from the doctors. The thing I was extremely comfortable with, was that a majority of the doctors are Jamaican or Cuban or um, uh, Nigerian. Like, you have doctors that have like come in, they're doing training and things like that. All of the nursing staff, all of the care coordination staff. So that was a completely different experience. That all of the thought leaders and the care providers look like me, understand me, know the food I'm eating, and that part of it felt really, really good and really different from my experience in the U.S.
Mhm.
Um, working in healthcare and having, delivered children and things like that.
Right.
Um, so there was a bit of comfort in that in communication. And then the neurosurgeon was called in to do more MRI and reading like what was going on, and the bleeding was sustained in one area, and so just keeping me on blood thinners and all of that, that's exhausting. Some of the like so I don't have any deformities. I can do all the things that they ask you to do when you're a stroke patient.
Yeah, they're always looking
Yes.
at the picture
Well,
and they're
all
fixated.
your face
Yeah.
yoga, I people ask me to smile like about 1,000 million times. So I'm like, ee, so I'm walking around, and then I find myself doing that to make sure that my face muscles are doing well. And then the thing that was really difficult about it was not knowing what I would be able to control with my body. So yeah, my face came back, and yes, I could move my hands, but then when I stood up, my legs were noodles still. Bathroom stuff, being a young person and needing help with those type of things and not knowing if that's going to like come back or how it's going to transform. And then the mental health with that, and then being a single mom and still feeling like very responsible for a large community of humans. And I love people. I love people who show me care. But then there was a lot of you can't die because I need, which is super exhausting. Like it's
Yeah.
really hard when folks have a stroke, y'all. I'm just letting people know out there in the universe, just don't put the pressure of don't die
Don't
because
die because
I
I
need this
need.
from you. That's not helpful.
That's
It's not helpful at all. I was
that's
like,
that's
can't
a
breathe,
that's a
can't
good
breathe.
lesson to remember. Don't
That's a
die
good
because I
lesson
need. That's not
because
what
I
you.
need you.
No,
Not not
not
helpful.
helpful.
But yeah, but I am, and the care staff at the new place that I moved to, which is like a kind of global hospital chain, Hospiton, which is a fantastic facility, and it does match U.S. standards of care
Mm,
in a way that was comfortable. It's kind of a boutique kind of hotel hospital situation. And that's where I could actually rest and could actually sleep, had
mm,
the support that I needed. So that was really fantastic to be able to have access to that. Um, and then, okay, and then as they've decided, they told me that the bleeding on my brain is sustained, and then I could get released into the care of my caregiver who's here, and my daughters were here at that time as well. My mom wanted to come, and I love mom, but then when mom is coming, you're like, okay, everything has to be perfect.
wow.
You really do go through these things as your body is trying to heal and to recover itself and to relearn things. So swallowing, like initially, was a joke.
Mm,
Everything came out of my mouth. So now I'm a little more sensitive. Like the other thing is like I don't have feeling in the same way that I used to have. Like if something is on my lip, how something is on your lip and I know it's on my lip, I'm gonna get it
yeah.
off. No, I
Really?
can't. Yeah, I can't. I can't. So now I'm more like my daughter's like, here, mom, just walk around with a mirror, or every time I'm eating, I'm doing I'm doing this because there's just certain things that you don't know. I do hope that those things come back. I don't know if it's different. Y'all will be able to see it, anybody who looks at on the video, but like my eyes are not because I'm tired and I'm also on blood thinners and things like that cause exhaustion. And then when I talk too much, I get tired of hearing myself talk. I get tired.
Yeah.
But
The
glad to be here.
notes is a lot.
So
It takes a lot
yeah, no, it's a lot.
to note.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It really, 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 really is a lot. So, but I'm happy to be here, and this whole theme and thought process about dancing with death, it does make you think about like what are the things that you want to be honored for, and how would you want to honor your life? So,
Mhm.
one of the things that I hope that people have experienced in dealing with me is a lot of just kindness and care. A
Mhm.
friend of mine and I were talking about like being nice. Like a person can be nice, but there's different when like the core of your spirit is like being kind. Um, And I do really like, for me, that's what feels good. That feels completion to me, is when I can be kind, even in the face of things that are really hard and difficult to deal with, to
Mhm.
just hold a level of kindness.
Yeah.
Um, that is what I feel like I was experiencing as I was going through this process. A whole lot of very kind humans in care of me, and I'm thankful for that. And then some of the rituals around dancing with death, I'm like, you know, to your mother's life celebration, which was beautiful in the garden, and people were telling wonderful stories. I want a whole lot of wonderful stories to be told. I want folks to be saying that I lived an extremely full life, and to have a lot of fun. And I want like parties. I want party, like party.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's party, let's be kind to each other, um, and honoring that. And then what does that look like, for what I am existing in today, and how am I going to be present in each moment today? Yes, doing something nice for a person that nobody needs to know about, on a daily basis. That, like, that's good therapy. That's good soup for the soul. That keeps us, in a healthy way to go. And those are some of the things that I'm thinking about. Um, because I don't have any, indicators for stroke, it also makes me take pause on like what's really going on with my life, and as like a Black woman, single mother, how I'm holding on to stress and how I'm dealing with the things that are really going on in life. And one of the biggest things that's happening in life, we kind of talked about this a couple of episodes back, Donald Trump has come into office, and that has shifted resources for a lot of people. Resources for me, in terms of a majority of the work that I do, is support organizations and social justice, helping marginalized communities. A lot of the ways that you and I came into relationship with each other, the organizations that are trying to help those who need support and help in the United States. And um, so my eye starts even twitching as I start thinking about those things, because it does cause me some anxiety. I know it does cause me some anxiety and stress, and I hold that, like, oh, you know, the people that are in need, are they having the resources? And hearing these things, knowing that, my younger daughter's college tuition has gone up, right? And like, okay, how am I going to figure how to be able to pay for that? And then the thoughts of this happening after I have a stroke and don't feel like I have the same facility and capacity, that I've had before, which is a go, go, go. When I said to you earlier, rest is really important. My sleep schedule has not been an 8-hour sleep schedule before this stroke thing. And even after the stroke thing, I don't know how to I'm working on it, but I do see myself not knowing how to sit down. People around me are like, you just have to sit down, you just have to stop. And I'm like, no, but I gotta make this call. I gotta make sure this bill is paid. I gotta make sure this thing is handled. I gotta make sure this person got the information that they had asked from me. And that is continuous. And those are the stressors that we don't pay attention to, that we get on like kind of robot mode,
Yeah.
continuing to like just do, 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 do. So not having the indicators that are traditional, that are biological indicators, are the more, what would be the word that we would say, that's non-biological indicators that can cause you to literally blow a fuse, blow a top, because that's what I did. Um, and thinking about the Trump administration, and think about all of the ways that there's a lack of consideration for people that are holding a lot,
Mhm.
and resources being limited, or access to the things that you need, or families being split apart, or people losing their housing, or food stamp or social security benefits. I'm a, what is it called? I'm a payee for people on social security. And then, before I had my stroke, we're looking at a social security check lose $300. And so we're in the community of care. Okay, so that's $300 less. Now we have to figure out what it is that we're going to be doing to make sure that that $300 is made up, so that I know that my baby and her grand, can have a place to live. So like all of those type of things like start to cause you to stress out.
Yeah.
Donald. You need to be thinking about us other folks out here, other than capital. people over profits and capitalism and all of that stuff, which we're not experiencing. Or like, folks with, immigration and all of the things that are occurring are the things that people are holding and need to have different ways of being able to maintain their wellness within that. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
it can end up in a stroke for somebody who's like relatively healthy, living in paradise, because I left the US because the stressors of the things and watching all of that hap beginning to happen and knowing how intensely it was going to get more, and then wanting to make sure that I was in a place where there was care. Having a stroke and then being in Florida and having to be taken to a hospital without health care and all that. I can't guarantee that I would have gotten the medication that I needed. I can't guarantee that I would have gotten the care that I needed because I don't have health insurance and all of those type of things. And so I'm much happier to be here. Um, but just thinking about all of the folks that are dealing with the lack of resources that's happening in the US. And that is a very, very real thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for all the energy it just took for you to share that story. And yeah, I mean, one of the most impactful books I ever read was it's
Mm-hmm.
called Stroke of Insight. So she was a neurosurgeon,
Mm,
physicist who had a stroke, had a massive stroke in her left brain functions. So all of her executive functions were gone. And the only thing that she still had was right brain functions, which is
motor, involuntary stuff.
love,
Yeah.
feelings, and energy, and
Okay, okay.
nothing executive. So no lists or remembering how to
Mm-hmm.
speak or who people are who. And
Mm,
tells the story about being in the hospital. And I gave this book, my stepdaughter, for my second marriage was going into nursing school, and I gave her this book because the book so intensely impacted me in the I feel like it should be required reading for anyone going through
yeah.
nursing school or medical school, because not only was this person a neuroscientist and a she understood what was happening to her, but she could no longer express, what she needed to express to people. And so she was kind of locked into this right side of her brain that
Mm,
everybody kept saying, "When is your mother coming? When is your mother coming?" And or when is they said her name. I don't remember what her mother's name was, but but she didn't remember. She's like, I don't know who this. I'm going to say Rebecca because I can't think of her name. I don't know who this Rebecca is, but she must be really important and she must be really amazing because everybody's like, when's she going to get here? When's she going to get here? And she tells the story of when her mother did get there. She walks into the hospital room and crawls into bed with her and just wraps her arms around her and embraces her. And Jill thought to herself, oh, this must be Rebecca. And this feels so good, didn't even
oh,
know. So it's like so amazing to hear how she, just as you were saying, that you were like, I thought I was communicating with people. I thought I was picking up the phone and calling someone. I thought I was telling them what needed to happen and nothing was coming out. The being able to express how that impacted you in real time, and then how it impacts you going forward. This book impacted me in a similar way. Just the benefit of like being behind that veil and being able to say what is happening on that. When she had the stroke, I think she was on the phone with someone, and so all communication just went away, and all she could do was, I think she tapped on the phone or something, and the person that was on the phone with her knew her well, and knew something was wrong and called the ambulance.
mm-hmm,
It's like
mm-hmm.
such a miracle that she was on the phone, just like you were saying, such a miracle that you were
That's,
surrounded by people and that there was an ambulance on site and all of the things that were in place to get you to that help. Because I think you're living alone, right? So had this happened at
mm-hmm.
your home with no one else around, you know,
Yeah,
you want to think
yeah,
about it. So,
I
um,
don't either.
so all of
Yeah,
it is just, it reminds us of how precious life is and how in a moment it can be gone. The part of my story that I didn't tell was that my partner and I had gone down to North Carolina for the
Right.
service. We'd gone down on Monday. Tuesday morning, we were at breakfast, and his son called him, who is 40 years old, had a aneurysm when he was 15,
Hmm.
was in the hospital for 6 months, was in a coma for 3 months, had to relearn everything after it all happened, still has some left side paralysis, and still, has some challenges, ongoing, challenges as a result of that traumatic experience. Calls my partner, we were at breakfast, calls him and says, Dad, I don't feel good. I think I'm having a stroke. And Brian said, call 911. And he hung up, and then he started calling people to try to help. And so by Wednesday morning, he was on a plane coming back up here,
Hmm.
because he needed to be with the son, and rightly so. So I wanted to be with him to support him and what was going on with his son. And he wanted to be with me to support me and what I was channeling and going through in terms of saying goodbye to my mother. And it really makes you appreciate not only the people that you have in your life and the support that they give you, but just how quickly things can shift. And I'm just so grateful that you were able to get the care that you got. But I really appreciate the wisdom of the stress that it can cause to say, don't die because I need.
Hmm. No, I need this. I need.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
remember that one.
that's real.
Uh,
That's real.
well,
Um,
and I'm gonna just say to our audience, that as a result of what you've been through and not having health insurance, you are on the mend and you are in your recovery process, which is I'm so grateful for as you've
so
been.
yeah.
But you have enormous
I do
amount.
have a GoFundMe if folks
You
want to
do,
support because we are paying. I have to help. I have to pay the bill to those lovely people at University of the West Indies.
yeah.
And then there's additional things that I have not been able to start, like a physical therapy. I have to do ophthalmology consults. I
Okay.
want to figure out. I mean, my eye is doing this trigger thing, but then I also don't have the same visual acuity that I had.
It's gonna
Um,
ask
and
that. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then I have to continue to get MRIs because they have to continue to check. The blood clot, like I said, is broken up, but they do want to continue to monitor the bleeding. And because I am not in the United States, that you have you have to pay for your care.
Mhm.
So a lot of people on the island, and yeah, I love the universe. So the neurosurgeon, as I was going through my process and asking questions, because I know things about standard of care, because I used to, do hospital administration. He and I just started having this conversation, like, what would it look like to transform primary care on this island and increase access to folks because you do have to have money to be able to get care. So a lot of the people here, my community of care, here in Jamaica were like, thank God you had money to pay for this because my mom has had multiple strokes, and every single time having a stroke, there is some other part of their ability that is lost to
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow, that I didn't know, I didn't know that, I didn't know, like in our system over, in the U.S., excuse me, in the U.S. system, you are provided the care, like wherever you go into the hospital, they give you the stuff and then you're billed a whole lot of money. And here it's like you got to pay to get what you need.
Oh.
So that is
So
different.
is there a health insurance system on the island, or do
Health insurance is paid through a bank, so you would pay into it. So if you have money to pay into like a health insurance account, and we have health insurance accounts,
right?
but if you don't have money to pay into a health insurance account, you're not going to a doctor, you're not going to get care, you're not. Yeah, that is what I understand and how I experience it. So that is one of the blessings and the benefit of, like, having a credit card. Now the credit card has to be paid off. But there's a lot of people who don't have that same accessibility.
Right.
And we think about the resources that come across through like USAID and all of that to expand those services. But when our US administration cuts off those funding, you're cutting off like the care for a, a large people getting or more people getting access to
Right.
resources in some way. or even having the equipment necessary to, or the medication necessary. And so those are things that we don't consider, folks US born don't consider about what it is to be developing relationship and soft power. And I understand like this idea of making sure that you take care of your own and your nation. But when there is a surplus and abundance, to your mother's privilege, share it and give it, and like make sure that the resources are available, because I mean, my situation would be completely different
Yeah.
if I didn't have a credit card,
And share it
and
without
I'm seeing what's happening.
and share it
Hmm.
without expectation of repayment.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I,
exactly.
yeah. I mean, that's the other
Yeah.
thing. It's like that's a trope and a narrative that we're hearing a lot coming out of
Hmm.
the current U.S. administration is that, you know, these countries that we give all this aid to are not grateful, and they're not, you know, they're not saying thank you enough. And what are they going to give us in return? And, you know, it's yeah. If I mean, I've never considered the U.S. as being any kind of benevolent, you know, whatever. But there
Hmm.
has been there in the past, we were doing a better job of
Yeah,
giving
doing a better
to other countries to help shore up their resources so that more of their folks can get access. We're also bombing entire, you know, other communities and
job. Absolutely.
destroying communities. So there's a dichotomy there that is definitely not good for the whole karma concept. But yeah, that's what it is. You know, when the administration says they're cutting off funds to USAID, you know,
Hmm.
and I'm remembering at the joint session of Congress that Trump did this year, you know, typically also called the State of the AKA the State of the Union. He was talking about he was going down this list of absurd funds that we
Yeah,
gave to
funds
other
to help.
countries. A lot of them, as you pointed out, were on the continent of Africa for this and that and this and that. And you can't believe you're paying for all of this stuff. And, you know, it's like, but there are humans attached to those programs. There are reasons why those programs started. And you know, you can make them sound as insane and as superfluous as you might want to, but there are human beings attached to that. And
Absolutely.
you know, and that's what we can't lose sight of.
Sign
And
up.
to those which, what is the saying, to those of which much is given, much is expected in return.
Absolutely.
That a
100%.
biblical quote. I don't remember, but I feel like it was. And you know, so that's one of the things that I was so grateful to hear more about my mom. I mean, I knew she was generous, and I knew that she gave, and I knew that she instilled that in all of us as well. But it was nice to just hear kind of a
Yeah.
microcosm of how that happened. And my bonus brother is in our lives because she saw, you know, he came to our household through my younger sister, and he was in a horrible situation and he needed help, and she said, I'm willing to give it. And so she took him into her home, and in conjunction with his mother, you know, in communication with, and this is what I can offer and provide. And you know, he credits his survival at almost, I think he's almost he's in his 40s, later 40s, and he credits his survival to her
Hmm.
intervention. And so anyway, yeah, all of that is
And that is church again.
yeah.
I'm gonna go back to it. That is church. That is creating community of care. And that is like the kindness that we want to uphold. And then the resources and the value added in that is that all of these other countries, people, they are adding to like our global economy, the global existence. Like there
Right.
is stuff that's produced out of all of these places. And like when one of us is like, if there's a resource, or if there's a group of people that don't have what they need to take care of their health, and then they get sick, and then somebody passes through there, and then that sickness is, you know, like it can affect all of us. We've seen what that looks like. And
Absolutely.
so it is important for us to be in consideration of that. And it's hopeful that when there's superpowers in the world, and they're looking at what they're cutting and what they're providing resources for, and it's important to really think about the impact that it has at every socioeconomic status across our communities.
Absolutely. Well, we will be dropping, to those of you listening and watching, we will have the link to Jay's GoFundMe, because neither one of us earn anything for doing this work. And
Yes, it's
we feel that these conversations are important, and we've heard from you all that you feel they're important. We've had a
thank you
few
for
more
that.
countries join us since our 1 year anniversary, and so to all of those new folks that have found us and listening, and hopefully we'll be able to get those listeners back in the fold after being gone for 3 weeks. But so the link to the GoFundMe will be in the show notes for the coming foreseeable future. So if you are so inclined to donate to Jay's GoFundMe to help her with those
Thank
medical
you.
expenses, I would personally take it as a personal favor.
Thank you so much. I also just appreciate this opportunity for these last consecutive episodes to really like go inward and turn into like what's going on personally, because we do talk, on a, kind of global surface level about community and society, and it's really also important to look at like the internally what the impact and reflect on like what the real impact on your own life is, and kind of share that with people, because I'm imagining that it will resonate with some other folks that are experiencing some of the same type of
Yeah,
hardships.
yeah.
So
Losing a mom is never
that's
easy. I'm very, very grateful that your daughters have not experienced that.
they
And
are too.
um, they are too.
They
Uh,
are
yeah,
too. So,
I'm just glad you're here with us again, and
thank you.
I look forward to our next conversation.
Yes, which will be soon. All right. I'm exhausted now.
Why do I give a fuck? Why do
Thanks for
I
joining
give a
us.
fuck?
Until next time,
Why
as you
do I
move
try
throughout
so
your
hard?
day,
Why am I
continue to
so
ask yourself,
attached? Why do I give a
Why Do I
fuck?
Give a
Why
Fuck
do
is
I
produced
give
in
a fuck?
collaboration with Johanna and
Why
Diane.
do I try
Music
so
by
hard?
Norwegian
Why do
musician
I care so
Water.
much?
See you next time.
Why do